This is a red flag, woman. You are the red flag. You are the red flag. If you are doing the cool girl trap, please don't. Please don't. We've all been there. I'm a super cool girl, super low maintenance. I'm not like other girls. I've been her. I get it. Not trying to shame you, just trying to point this out because life is so much better when you are not the cool girl who can tolerate everything, because you deserve more than just tolerating a guy and putting your knees on the back shelf. I was like a tomboy girl who like always had guy friends who would always end up falling in love with me. And they'd always just be like, oh my God, you're just so cool. You're not like other girls. And I would be like, thank you. And like, I thought that was the biggest compliment, which is just so cringe, but it's my truth. And I'm trying to be vulnerable with you. I want us to be friends. Like, come on, let's be so for real. What's wrong with being like other girls? If you think there's something wrong with that, that is like quintessential pick me and like a specific brand of the patriarchy working through your pick me, trying to say that like women aren't great. I mean, other girls aren't great. That is just pure internalized misogyny. And I feel so sad for the version of me who really, really thought that that was a compliment. So first question, have you ever found yourself playing one of the guys to fit in? Feel free to pause. If not, that's okay too. I have shared this before where I am a reformed pick-me. I used to be the biggest pick-me, and being one of the guys was like my bread and butter. I do have a twin brother, so I think naturally the way I grew up, like I had a lot of guy friends a lot of my life because me and my twin brother, like our social groups were intertwined. So I like was hanging out with him and his friends a lot. So that was just sort of like baked into my life. And also it definitely set me up in a way where I was happy to play one of the guys or be one of the guys and be one of the bros. And I totally did that because I wanted to not be like other girls and be extra special and cool. And that was like pick me 101, pick me, essential pick meism. Like, come on, come on. This one, I really wish I would have learned ages ago. First of all, trying to be low maintenance around a guy is the worst way to get yourself into a happy relationship. So if you're doing that, don't. Trust me, don't. Because then you're just going to teach them that they don't have to show up for you. And who wants a partner that doesn't show up for them? Especially when you think about the ways that women often are predisposed to carry the mental load of every relationship. So... But yeah, your weird, wonderful quirks are actually what make you cool. So when you downplay them, that is like so quintessential pick-me behavior, and it like breaks my heart. So yeah, let's dive into it. What is the wildest pick-me friend moment I've ever experienced? You know, I have a lot, and it's hard because I don't want to talk about them all on the internet. But one that I am willing to talk about because it's not that fresh of a wound is I had this friend. She was my best friend in college. We met freshman year. We lived on the same floor together. We like were 2 doors down, and we ended up living together later for a few years in college, like in the same apartment. And she was my best friend after college. We lived together, stayed best friends. And then I moved. I lived in Bogota, Colombia, and London, England for a little bit, and came back. And like, she was a flight attendant. So she was like in the city that I came back to, that we all went to college in, but also like traveling around a bit. And so I was like seeing her frequently, but like she sort of lived, if you have no flight attendants or you are one, you like get it, where you're like here, but you're not. Anyways, let's call her Mary. Okay, so me and Mary are friends forever, and we have 2 other girls who we've been friends with. One who we also met on like the same dorm freshman floor, who lived with us and ended up living with us later in college. We all lived together for 2 years. Let's call her Rebecca. And the third friend, the 3 of us met later on, and we all lived in the same apartment complex and like hung out all the time, like junior, senior year of college. And let's call her Mary, Rebecca, and Jessica. Mary, Rebecca, Jessica. Mary, Rebecca, Jessica. So Mary and Jessica ended up living together after college, and they were like really good friends, and we were all really good friends. We're all like a group of best friends. And Mary was really sheltered when she came to college. Like she was like her first time drinking basically in college, like one of those. So she like threw up every time she drank, and then had like big moments of like jumping out and experimenting. And this was with men, this was with drugs, like especially later in our college years, to the point where even at moments I was like, girl, are you good? Like, what are we doing here? Because we had like a rowdy group, but we weren't like doing anything super out of pocket in college. Like we were all pretty like tame considering how wild it can get in college. So that was Mary's experience. Rebecca was really chill. She worked a lot and she went to school, and she always kind of had like long distance boyfriends. So sometimes she would come out and wild with us, but she was definitely the most chill of the friend group. And then Jessica, the third one, she was probably probably the most wild of the friend group. Like, love to go to raves, like get in hers. Love that for her. She is so much fun. I'm still besties with her to this day. So whatever. That's like the college setup. We all leave college. Wow, you guys are getting like the longest version of this story. Mary and Jessica live together. Rebecca moves back to her hometown. I'm like traveling. I come back and Mary's around and Jessica's still living in the city that I came back to. And we're like all besties. And then Mary met this guy. Let's call him Jake. Mary meets Jake and she actually knew him in college and she had like a huge crush on him forever. And she would like always talk to me about him in college, but he had like a girlfriend, I don't know. They like meet somehow, or I feel like Facebook had something to do with it back in the day. This is an old story. I graduated from college a while ago and they start dating. And he's super Christian and she comes from like a Christian background. So Mary is like talking to him a lot about like all the guys she slept with in college and things like that. And he's really questioning her about like, why were you doing these drugs? Why were you sleeping with these people? Which is like, okay, major red flag. Like if a guy, first of all, don't even ask who the person you're romantically interested in slept with and vice versa. If they ask you, it's like none of their business. Like as long as you disclose any STDs you may have or like you take an STD test and you don't have any, like it's none of their business how many people you've slept with. And also that's just like such a dangerous road to go down. So I guess he was like questioning her about it. And she was like, it was all my friend's fault. Mary's like, it was CC and Jessica peer pressured me and they made me do all these drugs and sleep with all these people. And I wasn't even like sleeping with guys like that in college. Like there were like a few here and there, but like I was like early on my sexual awakening. And so I was like, bitch, what are you talking about? You like slept with more dudes than me. How are you blaming this on me? And not only did she tell him and was like, LOL, guys, like follow along. That's not how it was. She like told him and then was like, hey, Jessica, Cece, I can't be friends with you anymore because like he doesn't want me to be friends with you. And I don't want to be friends with you because I'm relooking at all of our college days. And like you guys were horrible influences on me and made me do all this stuff I want to do. But she stayed friends with Rebecca because Rebecca was like not as wild as us. And I was like, okay, I might have peer pressured you to smoke weed because like I was that girl in college who was like smoking weed all day, every day. I had some things I was working through. That was my coping mechanism. And maybe peer pressured you to drink now and then, which like, that's not fucking cool. I get it, but it was a different time. But like, no, I'm not going to sit here and let you tell me that like me and Jessica were like peer pressuring you to do drugs and stuff. You were doing it so much, Mary, that I came to you at certain points and I was like, are you good? Like you're doing this every weekend. Like that's really excessive. And I won't get into the details of it all. So basically she stopped being friends with us because of this guy. And not only did she stop being friends with me and Jessica, Mary also like unfollowed, deleted like everyone on Facebook who she was friends with, who we went to college with, like all of our friends, all of our acquaintances, just like deleted other than Rebecca. And yeah, same with Instagram. And she ended up marrying this guy. And I was always like, okay, once they get divorced, like I'll be here for her to help her pick up the pieces. But then she became a Trumper and like say la vie. But yeah, they did end up getting divorced and she like ditched all of her friends for that. At one point she came and like apologized to me and invited me to her wedding, which was like 4 months after this happened. It all happened so fast. And I like accepted her apology because I am also like, I don't like to be in conflict with people. But she never apologized to Jessica. And so I felt like that was such a red flag that like she would take accountability what she did to me and not Jessica because she did the same thing to both of us. And that made me feel like her apology was like bullshit. And at that time I met and was like seriously dating my now husband and was like chilling out a little bit more. And I feel like maybe that's why she was like, oh, I don't know. But anyways, long story short, my best friend from college stopped being friends with me because she wanted to seem less promiscuous and less like adventurous and blamed me and my friend Jessica and was like, I can't be friends with you anymore. And then proceeded to block everyone we went to college with on Facebook other than like one of our friends, Rebecca. So that's the story. It's really long-winded, but it's a lot of details and it's a lot of pick-me-ism. They're divorced now and she's married to someone new. So I wish her the best, but you know, no regrets. But yeah, it's really sad when you spend so much time like investing in a friendship and you have so much love for that person and then they just choose a man over you and rewrite history. Yeah, that was definitely the most pick-me friend moment I've ever experienced. She had kind of always been a pick-me, but I guess I was a pick-me in college too. So I didn't like know to look out for that because like I wasn't much better, but this was like extreme. Like this was extreme. So yeah, I still follow her on Instagram, but she doesn't follow me. I think this happens so often because women are taught to like be pick-me's, to want to be chosen by men. And when dating, they're like, I hope he chooses me. I hope he chooses me. And because we're taught to operate that way, we don't always think, okay, but is this a good fit for me? The way it really breeds that internalized misogyny. Compet feeds that idea that women need to compete for male validation and that male attention is somehow like tied to the value of how desirable we are, which like that's so backwards. So sick and twisted. But it is so real and it is so normalized and it is so just like, yeah, of course that's how we're living, where it's like, no, let's analyze this. Let's unlearn those harmful behaviors and foster healthier relationships with ourselves and with other women, whether it be friendships or something else. But it's like, why are we letting this culture like pin women against each other? For a man, all for a man? Take a moment to consider this. Think about the last time you felt threatened by another woman. What if instead of competing, you'd teamed up? How might that have changed your outcome? Again, a huge part of the patriarchy and the pick-meism of the patriarchy is pitting women against each other for men, for job roles, for this, for that, where it's like, what if we just collaborated? How might that have changed the outcome? I think about especially when I was such a pick-me, that was also like when I was entering the workforce and I had moved to Los Angeles and I would meet these women. And Los Angeles is the place where you like show up and brag about yourself everywhere you go. No one is fucking humble there. At least like their mask that they present to the world isn't. And I would meet these incredible women who had done so much and I would feel like so threatened, have so much imposter syndrome about it. And I'm like, damn, what would that have been like if I asked them for help? I said, hey, can I take you out for coffee? And can I pick your brain about how you got here or how you got this job or how you started this podcast or whatever it is, like these things that I wanted that I felt like these women had. And because they had it, I couldn't have it because there was only one. Like that's such faulty logic. And I think every girl listening can relate to or probably have an example themselves of a time where they were obsessing over a man, which it's like deep down, you're like, I know I'm not even that into him. I know he's not even that great. Like the wasn't that good. He isn't that hot. He's not that funny. I mean, he's great and he's a catch. And I kind of saw it going somewhere and I got really excited about it. And then he like ghosts or dips out or withdraws and you're like chasing him and so caught up. And like some level of you is like, bro, why are you being like this? Because you know he ain't shit. And especially if he's treating like you like this, he ain't shit. But you can't really break that cycle and you find yourself like in that pattern. And eventually you get over it and you're like, yeah, that guy really was not anything and totally not the man of my dreams. Especially because the man of my dreams would never treat me like that or I have me out here chasing men or whatever because I know my worth. But I feel like we all have that story. No matter the woman, no matter how secure you are, there's someone who can like bring out that in you. And I think it is very easy for women to be put in that position again because we're conditioned to like want that approval from men. So sometimes it's not even like you are that into him. You just like need that approval. When you don't get it, you're like a hamster on a wheel, like trying to get it, even though it doesn't make sense. Got it? Does that make sense? Like all of that potential, if that's how you feel in your relationship where you're like, okay, it's hard now and I'm toughing it out, but he's gonna marry me and then we're gonna have this great life together and white picket fence and kids, like maybe you're dating him for his potential. And you know, when I met my man, there was a lot of potential I dated him for sure. And also like in the moment, things were good. How do I explain this? Like if you're only dating someone for their potential, they might never realize it. So if you're feeling like that unpaid intern waiting for it to turn into a job, you might be in a throuple with misogyny because that might be misogyny's sneaky way, sneaking in there, expecting you as the woman to tolerate him, help him, support him, nurture him. It sounds awful. That sounds horrible. So having a partner that I know would be supportive and that I know would, like, we would find a way to make it equitable where I'm not expected to be like super mom because I'm not interested in being super mom at all. And I don't really understand why someone would want to be super mom because just being a mom at all is like literally the hardest job. And I know people say that, but I feel like no one gets it. It's not a job. Like it's a lifestyle. It's like people are like, it's the hardest job, but it's not a job because you don't get to clock out. You know, that is your life. I really started to outgrow my people pleasing was when I started to connect and protect with my inner child. I think many people, and you might be able to relate if you identify as a people pleaser or you feel like you have some people pleasing aspects. Many people learn people pleasing as like a mode of survival. Like it's not just this like personality quirk, it's like a coping mechanism. And although you might be doing it to protect yourself, it's not sustainable. Yeah, for a lot of us, it was a survival mechanism. We learned these things as a young age that make sense in our like 4-year-old brain, but that we don't really need to carry with us when we're 24, 34, 44, whatever years old. So again, when you connect with your inner child and you get to like learn some of those things, you can kind of tap into that like unconscious side of your brain that is steering the ship and you might not even realize it. This is especially true if you were raised in a home or in a community or in a culture where like being you didn't feel safe. And I think again, that's why so many women and young girls get this mechanism kind of developed in them, because there's something about our natural way that isn't safe in a lot of cultures and communities. Again, it doesn't have to be that you were in like this horrible toxic home. I mean, sometimes that's the case, but it can be little things that when you're a child and someone is like, you're being too loud, you're being too assertive, you're being too this, like you need to be more polite, you need to be more, like all the little ways that we tell young girls to make themselves smaller. If you're getting told that over and over again, you might be hearing like, oh, it's not safe for me to be my loud, expressive self. Oh, it's not safe for me to have X, Y, and Z needs. Oh, it's not safe for me to be my authentic self. And then you learn to turn on that sort of accommodating, people-pleasing mode. Maybe you grew up in a house where there was a parent whose mood changed like quicker than the weather, you know, and you had to be on your toes for what was safe and what wasn't. Maybe you were taught that being a good girl, a good person, a good kid was that you were supposed to be quiet. Maybe every time you cried about something and you were upset, you were told to stop being dramatic. Or maybe it's as simple as you were just really praised every time you put other people's needs above your own. Even parents and teachers and caregivers with the best intentions can be molding the next generation of people pleasers because, you know, there is a part of conforming to society where we do want people to be kind and be courteous and get along. You know, there is like a need to teach kids that. So I'm not here to tell you how to parent. I'm here to tell you how to parent your inner child. So I'm not going to go give parenting advice. So how do you take care of your inner child? If you've done the artist way, you know, it's like this workbook and you have like different tasks. And I had a picture of me as a child near the desk that I sat at. And whenever I would be struggling with something in the artist way, I would like look at younger me and try to connect with younger me. And if I was like saying something negative about myself, or not even necessarily negative, but having a self-limiting belief, I would look at that girl and be like, would I tell this young version of me these things? No. So why am I telling this adult version of me these things, you know? So that was one small way that really helped me connect with my inner child. I think something else I like to do is sort of have little mantras that I tell my inner child when I feel myself maybe shutting down or having a strong reaction to something, especially when I feel like, ooh, this is a really strong reaction to that. Or like I'm doing something out of habit or like coping mechanism and maybe it isn't something that is like serving me. I'll say something like, you did that because you had to stay safe, but you don't have to do that anymore. Or I'll say something like, it's okay, you're safe now. Like I'm here, I'll protect you. And I kind of say that to myself, but I imagine saying that to my inner child, which I feel like has been so healing for me because it's like really empowering. Like I'm an adult now. I'm not a 4-year-old girl. I'm not a 7-year-old girl. I'm not a 12-year-old girl anymore. Like I am the adult in the room and I'm working to be the type of adult the younger version of me would have wanted to have in the room. And so I think saying something like, it's okay, I'm here now and you're safe and I'm here to protect us. Like I got this, like it can take me out of this like maybe reactive or triggered place and bring me to a more neutral, empowered place. And again, like not to spiritual bypass, like if you need to be triggered, like be angry, go journal, go cry, whatever. I'm not telling you to like rush through those feelings. What I am saying is that I think as a society on an individual level and like as a collective, we have this gap in knowledge of connecting with our younger selves. You know, we're like, oh, that's the past, keep it pushing, focus on the future, keep moving forward. And I encourage you, especially if you're having a hard time, to really connect with the younger version of you. Because I think in a lot of ways, sadly for a lot of us, that was the last time we really were our authentic selves. And when in doubt, just remind yourself, you're not a little girl trying to earn someone's approval or get a little A on your test or be a good girl in school with, you know, polite smiles and being quiet. You're a grown-ass woman with a nervous system that deserves to be relaxed. and rested. You don't have to explain yourself into exhaustion. You don't have to perform to be worthy. You don't have to work to rest. You can just be. You're valid as you. So if you start shaking, just trying to say no to someone, if you get a stomach ache or your stomach is in knots when someone is upset with you, or if you feel guilty when you do things that are in your best interest but might be letting someone down, that is the first step. Like that is the uncomfortable growth that you get to work on, because when you start setting these little boundaries or sometimes big boundaries, it can be very hard at first and it's a new feeling, and you might feel that in physical ways. It might make you shake. It might make you nauseous, but that's not you being weak. That's not you being wrong. That's you healing. That's you like creating new neural pathways and new options for living in your authentic truth. You're reintroducing yourself to the part of you that gets to say, I matter too. My needs are just as important. I'm super passionate about creating like an anti-people pleasing movement, because there are studies that show the toll that people pleasing takes on your body. It is bad for your health. And one of the reasons I became a reformed people pleaser, I'm on the journey of being a reformed people pleaser, is because I found out I had an autoimmune condition. And when I found that out, a lot of stuff changed for me. And I really believe in like the mind, body, soul connection. And so I told you I was a woo-woo girl. So I really started to think about what are the things that I'm doing that are taking such a toll on me? Why am I so stressed out that my nervous system is like a wreck and my cortisol is going crazy? And like, you know, like, why am I that stressed? And it was all these little things that felt so normal to me that I didn't even realize were stressful. And a lot of times it was just like death by a thousand cuts of all the little ways that I would put people above myself. So what does people pleasing actually cost you? Because it could be a lot. Not to be dramatic, but like it could be your life. If saying yes to them means saying no to yourself, that's not kindness. That's self-erasure. That's abandoning yourself. Your intuition is not drama. It's data. Listen to what your gut is saying. Listen to what your womb is saying. Listen to your intuition. That's not you being anxious or dramatic. It can be, you know, sometimes like I'm an anxious girl and sometimes I'm like, is this real or is this anxiety? Because a lot of the problems I have are not things that come to fruition. They're all like in my head. Not all, but you know what I mean. So learn to feel what you're feeling. And maybe you don't have to act on it every single time, but like clock it, remember it. It's a data point. I encourage you not to see setting a boundary as closing a door on a relationship or building up walls. I encourage you to see setting a boundary as finally inviting yourself, your true authentic self, to the relationship. Boundaries are loving. They are. They get a bad rap, but boundaries are loving. Teaching people, saying no, sharing your truth teaches people how to have a relationship with the real you, not the convenient you. I'll say something like, you did that because you had to stay safe, but you don't have to do that anymore. Or I'll say something like, it's okay, you're safe now. Like, I'm here, I'll protect you. And I kind of say that to myself, but I imagine saying that to my inner child, which I feel like has been so healing for me, because it's like, really empowering. Like, I'm an adult now. I'm not a 4-year-old girl. I'm not a 7-year-old girl. I'm not a 12-year-old girl anymore. Like, I am the adult in the room, and I'm working to be the type of adult the younger version of me would have wanted to have in the room. What is one behavior that you've noticed in yourself that screams, pick me? How can you gently let go of that mindset and replace it with something kinder? If you're having trouble with that one, here are 4 steps to leave pick me energy behind. Self-reflection. Again, you can't change what you're not aware of. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I genuinely want to, or because I think it'll make me more appealing to someone else? And honestly, when you've been conditioned that way for so long, it is really hard to tell the difference. So be gentle with yourself and just explore that. You don't have to know the answer yet. Number 2, celebrate all the women around you. This might need to be a little fake it till you make it if you're so used to being in competition with other women. That's okay. That's okay. Just do it. Just do it. Instead of competing, compliment. Lifting another woman up does not take anything away from you. And in fact, it builds bonds. And that is exactly what the patriarchy doesn't want. It doesn't want you to have that thriving community. It doesn't want you to have that support. But you do, and we do. So let's do it. Former pick-me turned girl's girl till I die. Surround yourself with empowering voices. Seek out friends, follow content creators, try to be in communities that encourage collaboration over competition. If you're following someone and you notice how girl boss hustle culture, all like that is their MO, like you can mute them, you can unfollow them. Like you don't have to follow people just because you've been following them. And number 4, the 4th thing you can do to really help you leave pick me energy behind is call it out, or maybe call it in is a more supportive way of saying this. If you notice pick-me behavior in yourself or others, call it in. And the reason I say call it in instead of calling out is sort of like putting someone on the spot or shaming them. Where calling someone in is sort of the same thing, but doing it from a kind and compassionate place. The more confident you are, the more your light shines, the more you inspire others people's lights to shine. Because again, instead of being like, oh, this person has a bright light, that means I can't because they took all the voltage or whatever this metaphor is, that's not real. That's a faulty belief. And what is real is that, oh, this person was able to turn their light on that bright. That means I can do it too. That means maybe they could help me do it too. And even if they can't, like, now I know that's possible. I know what's possible for me because they were able to do it. Abundance versus scarcity. The word bimbo originally referred to men in the early 1800s. Only later did it get reassigned because, of course, a word couldn't stay neutral once it got anywhere near women. But when it was being used in the 1800s to describe men, it was describing a brutish, unintelligent man. Nowadays, we might call him a himbo. But in the 1820s, the term began to shift towards women, as language so often does when society decides the concept is too unserious to belong to men or to name men. Because heaven forbid a man be reduced to something frivolous. Clearly that's a woman's territory. Insert obnoxiously long eye roll here. When you think of bimbo, you might think of a blonde bombshell. And we all know that the original blonde bombshell is none other than the fabulous Miss Marilyn Monroe. I think this is a perfect case study for the way that bimbo is hurled as some sort of insult to discredit women, but women have learned to lean into that skid and embrace it and use it to step on up in the world. And we love to see it. We love to see a girl winning at a man's game. One thing about Marilyn, my girl, Miss Monroe, is that she was a misunderstood icon. She was a brilliant reader with a book collection that had 500 plus books in it. She advocated for racial equality, and she even negotiated her own contract with 20th Century Fox. So all the while she was being typecast as like the dumb blonde with big boobs, she was actually outsmarting men in Hollywood and in control of her image more than most men in Hollywood were at the time. So even though she had this like ditzy, dumb, la 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 persona, she did not play that dumb persona off cameras. She was a smart girl. We love her. Some of the iconic things she did was fire her agent and walk away from her Fox contract until she started getting roles that respected her. She wanted to play outside of that bimbo. She wanted to play stuff that she felt was respectful and iconic, and she stood on that business 10 toes down. One of the ways that Marilyn Monroe advocated for equality is that she ensured that Ella Fitzgerald would get booked at clubs by saying, if you book her, I'll sit in the front seat, which opened the door for career opportunities that Ella Fitzgerald was being denied because of discrimination. So Fitzgerald was initially denied the opportunity to perform and book a gig at the Mocambo Club in Hollywood. The club's management was like, you're not glamorous enough to Ella Fitzgerald. Crazy, which was essentially meant she wasn't white enough to book the gig. But Marilyn Monroe, who was a big fan of Ella Fitzgerald, was like, WTF? And she called the Mocambo's owner and she arranged for Ella Fitzgerald to perform. And part of this arrangement was that Marilyn Monroe promised to attend every night, bring other celebrities, and ensure major press coverage. And this really helped launch Ella Fitzgerald's career. And Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald became like low-key besties and looked out for each other. And we love to see it. Women supporting women. So even though she's perceived as this dumb blonde bimbo, she had a huge library. She loved to read. And in her personal library, she had Tolstoy, Joyce, Freud, ironically, thick stuff. We don't read things that dense these days unless you're like a writer who loves to read, like my husband. But she's iconic because she performed this dumb blonde routine to subvert it and weaponize her softness in that kind of way, It's like the whole time they saw blonde bombshell, but she saw a loophole. She saw a way to get into the game and hide in plain sight kind of thing. Just go straight in there and do it in a way where no one is. And inversely, take advantage of the men and the producers that were trying to take advantage of her, that didn't think she was smart enough to know what was going on and stand up for herself. But our girl was. Another iconic dumb blonde who notoriously plays into her bimbo personality is none other than Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is the CEO of Subversion. What I love about Paris is that we hear it now because she has like that documentary that came out, and she's done a lot of really great work, again, like advocating and things like that. And we'll hear her sort of bimbo voice change to her normal voice. And it's like, oh, you really were playing us this whole time. And it's like, I love to see it because so many people, influencers, celebrities alike, like put on this front when they get on the camera. They put on the persona, you know, Beyonce has Sasha Fierce. Like, what a great way to tap into something for show. And I love that Paris is sort of tapped into the dumb blonde, like vocal fry, like, that's hot. I can't even do it. That's hot. I can't do it. She played into this bimbo persona while quietly building like $1 billion brand. Snaps for my girl. Another thing that I don't think gets mentioned enough is that Paris Hilton was like influencing before the word influencer existed. She was crafting a brand and doing all this sort of strategy that is so common now. Like before that was really a thing. She was called a socialite, you know, and the Hilton heiress or whatever, but she really was building this brand and she used it to really launch herself in such a successful way and connect with so many fans across the world. And to think about her doing this before she kind of trailblazed this path, to think about her doing this before it was super common is amazing. You know, now we see the Addison Rays and the Alex Earls of the world doing it, and it's so awesome. But, you know, Paris ran so that we could walk. Paris has even publicly said, like, this is a personality I created. I think she said this was a character I created. Like, that's so iconic. Like, no one was doing that back then. That is so iconic. I think this really gave us the blueprint for ironic femininity and profitable underestimation. Go off, queen. Go off. I do see Gen Z sort of reclaiming bimboism. Hey, bimbo talk, if you're here. Hi. I think it's like fun to be hot and unserious while also being anti-capitalist and like pro-mutual aid, you know? That's one thing I love about Gen Z is they're like, don't put me in a box. It's very Elle Woods. I think Elle Woods inspired all of us in the way that Marilyn Monroe and Paris Hilton did, where it's like, I can be hot and wear all pink and be smarter than you. Being soft in this patriarchal society is really dismissed as weak. Soft is a synonym for weak often. And so what does it mean to reclaim softness? I think that's one of the most important, probably if there was like a pillar, if there were pillars to stay at home feminist and the ideology behind it, like embracing your softness would probably be one of them, because it's actually wild how radical of a gesture that is in the patriarchy that we live in. So I'm not really able to just like chill. Okay? So rest and don't feel guilty for it. I think rest becomes a really radical act when we're living under this kind of establishment, this kind of patriarchy, this country that is so enamored with capitalism. Rest is quite a political act because it is an act of choosing yourself. It is an act of knowing yourself. It's about leaning into yourself. Enter the soft girl era where you're no longer here for that male approval, that hustle culture, that external validation, but you're here for your own joy. And you know, it's really not about rejecting men. It's about centering yourself. It's about centering you. So instead of thinking, he only gets so jealous because he's afraid of losing me, it's because he loves me so much, try thinking, if I have to shrink myself to keep him, he's already lost me. Because you keep shrinking away, you're going to lose yourself. Anger can be used to create a positive change. And when you're a woman, I strongly believe that anger or being mean or being a bitch or being unlikable can save your life. Point is that serial killers often lure women in by like asking them for help, being like, hey, will you help me put this in my car? And the woman's like, yeah. And no victim blaming, especially it was the 70s. They didn't have all the information we have now about what predators men can be. But being helpful, being kind, and not just being an asshole and saying no to men literally could get you killed. And it has gotten women killed. So think about that the next time you want to be angry and mean and you're worried the stranger you don't know might think you're unlikable. Be mean. be angry. Insecure men think they want strong women, but they don't. They just want to take strong women and kick them down a notch so that they can feel better about themselves. They don't want to rise up to the level that you're at. They want to bring you down to their level. They want to dim your light so that they don't have to level up. And girl, let's not try to heal these men anymore, okay? It's 2025. You can't heal him. And even if you can, it's not up to you. He should be in therapy. It should be up to his therapist. If it's not when you're just being you, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe that's just a sign that you get to practice what it feels like just being you a little bit. If you're not used to it, it might feel very uncomfortable. What would change for you? What would that be like? No more bending over backwards for validation. Just pure, unfiltered, self-approved you. And anyone who tries to tell you to shut the up because of how you look, like, know that it's because you're great. Like, know that that is them being insecure. It is about them. It is not about you. But again, like, that is the patriarchy. That is the system of oppression saying, shh, why are you being loud here? Go be smaller. Go to the gym. Go count your calories. Go get a facelift, which, like, I'm down to go to the gym and get a facelift. Like, I am. But I'm going to do those things and I'm going to talk my shit. Okay? It's 2025, basically. Being a soft girl is really about choosing yourself over guilt, choosing what you want to eat or how you want to spend your time, and being gentle with yourself and not letting that guilt harass you. Yeah, I think my major contribution to being a soft girl is I have really learned to go to the gym because I want to be healthy and not because I want to be fit. And that means some weeks the healthier option is for me not to work out, and like, that's okay, or not to push myself as hard, and that's okay. And like, it has really transformed my life, just like focusing on actually being healthy and not what I look like. And that is soft girl era core for me. It is night and day for how I used to live and the ways I used to push myself for like the external validation. And now it's really like learning to listen to my body and figuring out what I need and really respecting my body and respecting myself. And again, like, being a soft girl is such a radical act in this world that wants you to be hard and tough and go and push. I see softness as an act of rebellion in this world that like wants you to be rigid and hard and tough. Like, being soft, I feel like, is such a sweet, joyous way to rebel. You know, your softness is rebellion, your joy is rebellion, your laughter is rebellion. Like, I really believe all of that. Like, rejecting grind culture, healing your inner child, like, that to me is softness is rebellion. But I feel like almost like the trad wives weaponize that and turn softness into like compliance. The patriarchy wants you to be a pick-me, because when you are a pick-me, you are in competition and you are not in collaboration, which is why we are diving into the segment, one of my favorites, Pick-Me Rehab, from a former recovering pick-me herself. I want to do it a little differently this time than we've done it in the past, and just sort of like spitfire some things to chew on for all of us. And number one being, why can't pick-me energy exist in the matriarchy? Again, as you know, my philosophy is we do the work, we change in here, we change out here, we change it within our communities, we change the world. All right. That is what we're trying to do here. And being a pick-me is sort of like a haha funny thing on the internet, but it is really the patriarchy working through you so severely and so intentionally. So no more of that. And the being a pick-me like literally does not work in the matriarchy. So if you are being a pick-me, you are upholding the patriarchy. We do not want to be a pick-me, and we want to uphold the matriarchy. When does I care about you become you're not allowed to have a life outside of this? Like, again, it happens very slowly and then all at once. I think society really romanticizes obsession as devotion. And those are two very different things. When we are romanticizing obsession, we are seeing these toxic controlling behaviors and being like, he cares about me so much. And like, no, he doesn't. He cares about controlling you. He cares about having you. He doesn't care about you. Because if he cared about your best interests, he would want you to live a full life. And that means wearing things that make you feel empowered. That means having friends that make you feel happy, no matter their gender. That means going out with or without him. That means going on girls' trips, having your girl time. Like, it means having a life outside of him. So yeah, having a guy that's jealous is essentially a red flag. It's a huge ick for me, and it should be a huge red flag. And I blame society because they make it seem like having a jealous guy is like a good thing, that he means he's like on the hook. And no, girl, that couldn't be further from the truth. It means he's insecure. I think some people see jealousy as like, oh, that just shows how into me you are. No, it shows how insecure they are. If someone is that jealous, that means they're insecure. That one might be hard to hear for some of you, but I think we hear this all the time when men say stuff like, I'm only like this because I love you so much. I've never felt this way before. Like, again, putting their bad toxic habits onto you. It's because of how much they love you. And now it's like your responsibility to have them navigate like simple emotions that they should be able to like navigate on their own, you know? So to reiterate, love isn't obsessive. Love shouldn't require surveillance. And love should never make you feel like you're walking on eggshells for someone else's emotional regulation. They should be able to regulate their own emotions. They shouldn't act out or act crazy or be jealous or be controlling because of how much they love you. Like, they should be able to handle feelings like love. If it feels like walking on eggshells in platform heels, it is not love. That's control. The second you start shrinking yourself to keep the peace, i.e. canceling plans, changing your outfit, hesitating before posting a pic because you don't want to deal with his reaction, stuff like that. Yeah, that's not partnership, babe. That's low-key surveillance. And if you're struggling to like differentiate, it can be so hard when you're in this kind of relationship to understand that it's toxic because you've been conditioned to perceive this as love. But ask yourself this: if you flip the script, if you were the one blowing up his phone, demanding he changed his outfit, interrogating him about who he follows on Instagram, would he call that love? Or would he say, you're being crazy, you're being clingy, yeah, yada, 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 yada. I think we know which one. I don't think you would call that love. I think you would call that crazy. And here's the thing. A lot of controlling behavior can start off feeling like affection. Text me when you get home can be really cute. Who's going to be at the party? It's so great when men ask you questions about your life. Like, you know, you hear that and you're like, oh my God, he's taking an interest. But over time, those questions could start leading into some dangerous territory. Over time, that could go from like, hey, I care about you and I just want to make sure you get home safe, to like, I don't want you out past a certain hour, so let me know when you're home, because I want to know when you get home. Or I don't want you out with this group of people. If you're going to go out with them, go home early, or else I'm going to assume that you cheated on me, or I'm going to accuse you of lying to me, or like it gets out of hand. It gets really toxic really quickly. When those questions come from an insecure place and not from actual affection, that's when it's like the red flag. And again, that's why this is so hard to decipher, because some of those things are really nice in the beginning of a relationship. They do seem like affection, and they can be when it's coming from a good place of actually caring about you. And again, that's why it's like, you got to be able to like, it's kind of like the next thing you got to wait for to observe that. So it's not the text me when you get home in itself that is sketchy. It's like, if you get home at a time that they think is unreasonable, how are they going to feel about that? Are they going to go, LOL, you must have had a wild one. Tell me about it. Was it fun? Are they going to go, wow, you stayed out till 4 a.m. without me? Ugh. See, this is why I don't like you going out without me, you got too drunk, like coming at you for just like living life. So when those cute little questions start to turn into, why didn't you answer me when I called you 6 times? You're like, because I was out with my friends, I wasn't checking my phone. Or it turns into, see, this is why I don't want you going out without me. It's not protective, it's possessive. According to the Duluth model, which is a model that maps out patterns of abuse, control and isolation are often the opening act before abuse takes the main stage. Witches weren't wicked. They were just unbothered queens who didn't want to adhere to patriarchal norms. And we couldn't talk about witches and the patriarchy without getting into the Salem witch trials. Which, please, you thought this wasn't going to get historical? Come on now. In the Salem witch trials, over 200 people were accused and executed for being witches. All but one of those people were women. So basically, all women. Except for that one guy. Shout out to him. But what you might not have heard about the Salem witch trials is most of the women that were persecuted and accused of being a witch were women who were landowners, outspoken, or who were midwives. So they were women who had stuff going on. Bridget Bishop, who was the first woman who was executed for being a witch, owned a tavern, wore flashy clothes, and was known to speak her mind. So basically, she had main character energy and was an independent girly, and the patriarchs and misogynists of Salem did not like it. So what did they do? do? They accused her of being a witch. What's not talked about enough is that witch trials were politically and economically motivated. A lot of these sham witch trials were rooted in property theft. Basically, men could claim land from these executed women in ways that they couldn't if they were alive. Like widows owned the land and the men in the community couldn't take it from her unless she was a witch and no longer there to protect her land. So this land and this property was redistributed to either male relatives or the state. So the witch trials were one big economic loophole on how to steal land from women, because the patriarchy's boot wasn't on our necks enough. Women were finally starting to own land and they were like, no, I'm going to hang you for being a witch. So yeah, it was all about power, not about potions. Burning women at the stake was essentially colonial asset management. But another reason they went after women, they wanted witches to be a threat. The type of women they went after, again, they owned land, they were midwives, they were not necessarily super reliant on men. And the symbol of autonomous womanhood, being educated, being spiritual, not reliant on male dominant systems, the patriarchy saw that and was like, not today, and would call these women witches, and they would have their witch trials and be hung or burned. And as we know, accused women were often widows who owned land, healers, or just some sort of nonconformist, women living outside the patriarchal norms. Basically, your neighborhood doula, yoga instructor, or trauma-informed TikTok therapist. Like, those were the people that were being targeted. But I love to see so many women nowadays reconnect to that witchy part of them, whether it's through crystals or tarot cards or astrology. I see so many women today reclaiming their witchhood through spirituality, intuition, rituals, working with the moon. There's a huge conversation online about how women who have their menstrual cycle, because not all women do, especially women who are on birth control that like pause it, but women who do, you're in cycle with the moon. So the way that day is set up, it's like for a man. Men get their testosterone, like they have a daily cycle, basically, like from morning till night, where women have like a 28 to 31 day cycle. And so women are now being encouraged, especially women who own their own businesses or can like create their own schedule, to have their schedule tailored to their cycle. And I've recently started doing this, and it's a game changer. I get horrible periods too, and my luteal phase sucks. So thinking about it in this way has totally changed my life, and 10 out of 10 recommend. Yeah, I love witch talk. I love a good witch talk. Love astrology talk. Love sharing astrology memes. One of my favorite astrology websites is called Forever Conscious. Go check it out. They do like really good full moon rituals and new moon rituals and stuff like that. But yeah, these are all ways of reclaiming our feminine wisdom and maybe even healing those feminine wounds that we have from like past lives of women turning against each other to save their own asses. You know, women were like snitching on other women to save themselves, saying like, oh, it's not me, that she's the witch. You know, like that grief. How horrible. We all got some weird wounds to work through as a feminine collective, I think, since then, and so many other times that the patriarchy has pitted women against each other. But yeah, all that to say is that a witch is just a woman with knowledge, a woman with independence, or a woman with vibes that are too strong to be controlled. So you're looking at her. Modern day witchy woman. Witches weren't wicked. They were just unbothered queens who didn't want to adhere to patriarchal norms. And we couldn't talk about witches and the patriarchy without getting into the Salem witch trials. Which, please, you thought this wasn't going to get historical? Come on now. In the Salem witch trials, over 200 people were accused and executed for being witches. All but one of those people were women. So basically, all women. Except for that one guy. Shout out to him. But what you might not have heard about the Salem witch trials is most of the women that were persecuted and accused of being a witch were women who were landowners, outspoken, or who were midwives. So they were women who had stuff going on. Bridget Bishop, who was the first woman who was executed for being a witch, owned a tavern, wore flashy clothes, and was known to speak her mind. So basically, she had main character energy and was an independent girly, and the patriarchs and misogynists of Salem did not like it. So what did they do? do, they accused her of being a witch. What's not talked about enough is that witch trials were politically and economically motivated. A lot of these sham witch trials were rooted in property theft. Basically, men could claim land from these executed women in ways that they couldn't if they were alive. Like, widows owned the land and the men in the community couldn't take it from her unless she was a witch and no longer there to protect her land. So this land and this property was redistributed to either male relatives or the state. So the witch trials were one big economic loophole on how to steal land from women, because the patriarchy's boot wasn't on our necks enough. Women were finally starting to own land and they were like, no, I'm going to hang you for being a witch. So yeah, it was all about power, not about potions. Burning women at the stake was essentially colonial asset management. But another reason they went after women, they wanted witches to be a threat. The type of women they went after, again, they owned land, they were midwives, they were not necessarily super reliant on men. And the symbol of autonomous womanhood, being educated, being spiritual, not reliant on male dominant systems, the patriarchy saw that and was like, not today, and would call these women witches, and they would have their witch trials and be hung or burned. And as we know, accused women were often widows who owned land, healers, or just some sort of nonconformist, women living outside the patriarchal norms. Basically, your neighborhood doula, yoga instructor, or trauma-informed TikTok therapist. Like, those were the people that were being targeted. But I love to see so many women nowadays reconnect to that witchy part of them, whether it's through crystals or tarot cards or astrology. I see so many women today reclaiming their witchhood through spirituality, intuition, rituals, working with the moon. There's a huge conversation online about how women who have their menstrual cycle, because not all women do, especially women who are on birth control that like pause it, but women who do, you're in cycle with the moon. So the way that day is set up, it's like for a man. Men get their testosterone, like they have a daily cycle, basically, like from morning till night, where women have like a 28 to 31 day cycle. And so women are now being encouraged, especially women who own their own businesses or can like create their own schedule, to have their schedule tailored to their cycle. And I've recently started doing this and it's a game changer. I get horrible periods too, and my luteal phase sucks. So thinking about it in this way has totally changed my life, and 10 out of 10 recommend. Yeah, I love witch talk. I love a good witch talk. Love astrology talk. Love sharing astrology memes. One of my favorite astrology websites is called Forever Conscious. Go check it out. They do like really good full moon rituals and new moon rituals and stuff like that. But yeah, these are all ways of reclaiming our feminine wisdom and maybe even healing those feminine wounds that we have from like past lives of women turning against each other to save their own asses. You know, women were like snitching on other women to save themselves, saying like, oh, it's not me, that she's the witch. You know, like that grief. How horrible. We all got some weird wounds to work through as a feminine collective, I think, since then, and so many other times that the patriarchy has pitted women against each other. But yeah, all that to say is that a witch is just a woman with knowledge, a woman with independence, or a woman with vibes that are too strong to be controlled. So you're looking at her, modern day witchy woman. Yeah, I have like a little altar with crystals on it. Love to do my tarot, love to light my candles. How do you love to get into your witchness? Tell me your witch tips. I love witch talk and learning all the little witch tips. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like a witch, but I'm not a witch. Like, I'm not someone you should come to for witch advice if you're like advanced, but I'm like witch 101. Like, I know astrology, I know tarot, I know like the things, you know? Witch 101, I'm your girl. But I have friends who are really witchy, and they're like masters of the art in the spirit world, and I love to see it. Okay, bimbo, witch, slut. Let's move on to the slut agenda and why we love it. Slut is not an insult, it's an aesthetic, and it's a threat to male control. I don't think we can talk about slutdom without talking about Freud's most icky legacy, the Madonna horror complex. Coined by Freud, it describes how men split women into two categories, Madonna or whore. The Madonna here is not pop icon and sensation Madonna. That's not what we mean when we say Madonna whore. The Madonna we're referring to here is the Virgin Mary, aka the Madonna in the Christian religion. Madonna literally comes from the Italian ma, M-A, donna, D-O-N-N-A, which means my lady. being a respectable lady, Madonna. But it's often used in like the religious context or whatever, referring to Mary, the mother of Jesus. Immaculate Conception, Virgin Mary, who was able to have a baby without ever having sex. That one. AKA the ultimate symbol of purity, sacrifice, and saintly femininity. So when Freud coined the Madonna whore complex, he was drawing from this religious archetype to explain the ways some men split women into binary roles. Madonna, aka pure and wife-worthy, or whore, someone a man wants to be with, but not wife material, sultry, but in a shameful kind of way. And we still see this today. The fact that a body count matters to certain people. We see it in pop culture from movies like Pretty Woman, iconic, but also we see it like with Taylor Swift, who's always shamed for her love life, it seems like. If she's single, she's shamed for it. Now she has a man, she's shamed for it. She's like shamed for having multiple relationships. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't get that same smoke, and he's dating young women whose brains haven't fully formed. Like, we should be worried about that. And for women, this can be a really tricky place because you need to be sexy, but you can't be sexual. You need to be beautiful, but you can't know that you're beautiful. You need to be desirable, but only to one man forever. Like, it's exhausting. It's like this ping pong back and forth. It makes no sense. It's not real. It's man-made, and I'm not a fan of it. And I think a lot of this, as you might have gathered from the whole Madonna, Mother Mary of it all, is it comes from this sort of purity culture, which we are seeing the rise of today in modern day. So careful with that, girls. Careful with that one, girlies, because purity culture is just the patriarchy in a white dress. We don't like her. What you might not know about purity culture is its evangelical origins. Modern day purity culture exploded in the US in the 1990s and early 2000s. And it's rooted in white evangelical Christianity. It was a time of true love waits. It was a time of purity rings. It was a time of hanging out with your youth pastor every night of the week for some reason. And girls are taught, not only Christian evangelical girls, like commonly throughout the world, girls are taught that their virginity is their value. And if they lose their virginity, they are no longer valuable to a man, which is crazy. These young girls are taught that their worth is tied to their sexual purity. Like, why? And that once you have you're less than, you're damaged goods, I don't even want to say it. And the most frustrating part of this is the double standard. Why do boys get a free pass? Boys will be boys. Other than the fact that boys aren't held to this standard, another form that this double standard takes is that boys are told to control their urges, maybe, but they're not told that they are not going to be a good husband or father or whatever if they don't control those urges. They're just like, it's like a light suggestion that the boys should control their urges. And at the same time, girls are not only responsible for their purity in themselves, they're responsible for controlling said boys' urges. The burden of modesty, abstinence, and shame is always falling on young girls and women. Why? And a lot of these conversations frame sex as something super dangerous, which, practice safe sex, like that's a thing. Sex ed should be taught in schools. It's not in a lot of places in the US. And instead they're taught this like purity BS. But there are diseases you can get from sex. You can't get pregnant. And if that's not what you want, like there are unintended consequences and outcomes from having sex. And also, if you're practicing safe sex, and if you have sex education, you know how to practice safe sex, then there's no need to frame sex as like this dangerous thing, where we're now framing sexuality as something that's like shameful or dirty or dangerous, especially when said sex is happening outside of marriage. And the consequence of this is that there are generations of women and men who feel guilt, anxiety, and even trauma around sexual desire and sexual fantasies. And that's like a part of the human experience. Like, don't let shame live there. And as I said, this kind of stems from a religious standpoint, but it lingers outside the religious confines. It's lingering outside religious spaces. Purity culture shows up in the way women are policed for showing their skin, for having too many partners, or for being too sexual, or be too promiscuous or too sexual online. And like to the point where if women get assaulted and they were drinking or they were wearing a short skirt, or you know what I mean, they're like, I'm not even going to come forward because no one's going to believe me because I was wearing a short skirt. And it's so tragic to see how normalized that is. And that is the problem with purity culture and the impacts it has on society, is that if a woman's worth is tied to her virginity or her purity, not showing her skin or whatever, and then something bad happens to her and she's assaulted by a man, she's now not believed, valued, or whatever because she's slept with people before a man who assaulted. Like, make it make sense. Like, why aren't men being taught not to harm women? Why are women being taught to cover it up because men can't control their urges? Like, in what world does that make sense? And although purity culture teaches abstinence as their birth control method, which isn't a good one, it teaches much more than that. It teaches us that our bodies are problems to be managed, and that's such a toxic relationship to have with yourself. So what does slut really mean when someone's calling you a slut? It's historically been used to discredit autonomous women, to control female pleasure, and to reinforce double standards. And I want nothing to do with that. So yeah, call me a slut. Let's reclaim slut. Let's reclaim our autonomy. Let's reclaim our pleasure, and let's reclaim ignoring double standards. Let's wrap up with some feminist affirmations. Maybe take a deep breath and shake out any of the vibes, any of, like, maybe some of talking about all that misogyny brought some hard memories or hard realizations up for you. Shake it out for a second and repeat after me, or say it with me if you'd like, or just say it in your head. I do not exist to make men comfortable. I do not exist to make men comfortable. I definitely do not exist to make men comfortable. I will not shrink myself to be more dateable. I will not shrink myself to be more dateable. I will not shrink myself to be more dateable. I am worthy of a relationship where I am fully seen, valued, and respected. I am worthy of a relationship where I am fully seen, valued, and respected. I am worthy of a relationship where I am fully seen, valued, and respected. Remember, as we close, that the love that you allow in your life should never, ever, ever come at the cost of your own self-worth. And if a man ever tells him your feminism or your humor or anything about your personality is too much, just remind him that carrying the entire relationship on your back is also a little too much. And on that note, let's get out of here. Thank you so much for joining this episode of Stay at Home Feminist. We are a newish show, so please like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Let us know how you're feeling about us. We want to hear from you. What other topics do you want me to talk about? I'm very ready to take suggestions from the audience. Let me know. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. I hope to see you next week. See you next time, besties. Bye.